What is going on, Panthers Nation? Carolina Dad here, your host of the Two Growls, 1-4 podcast. Welcome to your Week 6 preview of the Carolina Panthers and the Miami Dolphins. Before we jump into this podcast, I'd like to say welcome to our Miami Dolphins fans. Maybe there are some of you coming to the show trying to understand if you should be worried. We're going to talk about it on today's episode. Do not worry, we'll get there. I got to say, the Detroit Lions fans showed up and showed out last week for YouTube. That was my most viewed video since I've started doing this. And for those who are just tuning in, I'm just now getting things on YouTube. I'm all over wherever you want to get your podcast. But the video portion of this, new. And hey, you can even watch the videos on Spotify. But anyways, let's get into this game. Wow. Carolina Panthers 0-5. Panthers fans that are listening know that I predicted us to be 10-7 and win the NFC South, and my oh my, how wrong I am. I'm eating my words, but it's okay. I'll own up to it. I've owned up to the mistakes, the letdowns that I have given everyone in this fan base. But as we look across the aisle at the Miami Dolphins, I gotta tell you, we talked about the Detroit Lions last week. I'm talking about Miami Dolphins this week. Talking about good football teams. Oh my gosh, what a good football team that we have on our hands. Miami Dolphins, one of the most explosive offenses in the league, just signed Chase Claypool. I don't know if he'll be out there. We'll see. Either way, doesn't matter. This team is explosive. And hey, y'all remember Robbie Chosen-Anderson? Guess where he is? Down there in the Miami Dolphins. Weapons across the board in this offense. And it's not just passing, it's rushing. They can get you on both sides of the ball. Defense kind of spotty. I'm not going to say it's terrible because our defense and offense are some of the worst in the league. For those who listen to kind of my side rants this week, the Panthers came in at number 31 on the ESPN Power Rankings. I don't know how. How can you tell me that we are not the worst team in the league? But the team that did come in last, the New York Giants, who the Miami Dolphins just beat pretty dang easily. So here we are. What do I anticipate? What do I expect? I think we go into this, or we come out of this, I should say. I guess I won't give you my prediction till the end. I really wanted to give you my prediction then, but I'm gonna hold it for just a little bit to talk about the matchup. The thing that was eye-opening, and I went on Twitter this week. Again, follow me wherever you get your social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on all those, YouTube. The Miami Dolphins are 13.5-point favorites, almost 2 touchdown favorites. Now, the Detroit Lions last week were around 10. They covered easily. Miami more explosive. Miami putting up 70 points. One of the best teams in the league, at least offensively. I know they had the letdown to Buffalo, but it's a division team, division rival. I mean, look at like us playing the Saints, the Falcons, or the Bucks. So I'm going to let that one slide. This is still a very good football team. But 13.5. So we talk about the 13.5-point spread. If that line holds, and I think it will, and I don't think it'll move up or down much because that's almost 2 touchdowns, it would be the second highest point spread in the league this season. The only other point spread that was higher was a matchup, or was the Arizona Cardinals as a 14.5-point underdog earlier in the year. So again, Giants last week were 12.5 points, so we're right there in between both of those. 3 teams have covered the spread when being not favored by 8 points this year. Jets, Commanders, and the Cardinals. The Cardinals are the only team to win a game as an underdog, being down or not favored by 8 points. That was against the Dallas Cowboys. So here we go. I mean, on paper, everything is stacking up in Miami's favor. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the stats. I'll get into a little bit more a preview in the game here in a second. I talk about Miami's offense. Number 1 in points per game, 36 points per game, 500 yards per game. Like, oh my God, they are putting up some points. About 8 yards per play. Explosive. You talk about Panthers offense putting up about 4 yards per play. And again, they're putting up 8.3. I'm not worried about third down conversions. They are 11th in the league at about 41%. But who needs third downs or is worried about third downs when you're over there scoring? Number 1 red zone scoring team in the league for touchdowns. And they're scoring about 4.8 touchdowns per game. Yeah, they are a scary good team. Now, when you get into the analytics of the rushing attack for Miami, rushing yards, average yard per rush, about 6.9 yards on our side. We know the running game has struggled. Odds are, Miles Sanders has been on the injury report this week. Miles Sanders might as well not even be on the roster at this point with his production. So here we are, when you start thinking about game plan strategy, Chuba Hubbard, potentially looking at Raheem Blackshear being elevated or Tariq Cohen. I would lean on Blackshear because of the experience. Tariq still, getting back into the groove, but wouldn't be surprised if that happened. Would actually be kind of dirty, in my opinion, to elevate Tariq when you've had Raheem on the roster for this long. Raheem Blackshear for those tuning in. So, yeah, talk about it. Now, we know that Laviska is getting involved more in the run game. He actually was decent last week. And Thomas Brown talked about it today in his presser that it's just about the ability to get him the ball. But you can only get him the ball in so many ways. And people are going to kind of hone in on that when he is in the game. I don't like him as much as a running back, but if it gets him his touches and, maybe he can break one, we will see. We know our rushing attack is just terrible. I mean, for perspective, like I said, the 4 yards per carry, we're averaging about 96 yards per game. Miami's double that, 185 yards per game. You can't make this stuff up, man. It is just mind-boggling at how productive they are. The passing attack of the Miami Dolphins, yards per pass, about 9.8. Bryce Young slowly ticking up here at 4.9. Completion percentage, 72%, which is third in the league. We have 62%, which is 23rd. And, here's the thing. If you are a Miami Dolphins fan, or if you're a Carolina Panthers fan and you haven't really been paying attention, you go back and look at last week's box score against the Detroit Lions, and maybe you're a little worried, like, oh man, Bryce Young was, threw for 3 touchdowns, had the 2 interceptions, the one to the, tight end screen with Aiden Hutchinson. The other was just kind of a really good play by the cornerback. But you're sitting there like, oh man, maybe he's going to go off. No. I'm going to tell you, I would love it. There is an opportunity here for Bryce to kind of take the next step forward. So I'm not going to say he's been bad. He is making a lot of progress. And if you go watch his film, which I've been watching, the plays are there. But at the same time, he's also hesitant to get the ball out. And Miami has one of the best pass rushes in the league. We'll look at the stats in just a second. But they're able to get pressure on the quarterback. We saw what they did against the New York Giants. That is what they've been known for this year. And that's not a good combination for a team that struggles to run the ball, struggles to get separation at the wide receiver position when Adam Thielen's really your primary target. One of the things that's really just like you throw up your hands. So for those, again, this is really for like the Dolphins fans and or Panthers fans that have been out of the loop. Earlier this year in a presser, Frank Reich admitted to calling a play for Adam Thielen, but here's the issue. Adam Thielen was not on the field for that play. So he is our play caller. There's a lot of rumblings in the Carolinas that people want Thomas Brown to take over. And I can tell you, if you just want to sit back and listen to somebody talk, listen to Thomas Brown and his pressers. Just sit back and listen to this man. Now, this past week, as I'm going through the box score at the end of the game, I go out to NFL.com because it's a little more detailed, like a 15-page document compared to what's on ESPN. I look at the people that did not play, and Terrace Marshall Jr. is on there. He did not play a snap. Frank Reich admitted it after this week that was on him for not getting him in the game. Folks, let me tell you, Terrace Marshall, not against the Lions, but the previous week against the Vikings, was our leading receiver in terms of catches, and he did not even play a snap. That is how lost this team is. We are just so far gone. There's so much frustration. I think the only positive on our team right now, I guess there's a few, but it's the kicking game, which Miami's got a pretty dang good kicking game themselves. So we get into the breakdown. Let's talk about know your foe. So I went over records. We are 0-5, 0-2 in the NFC South. Again, this game is at 1 o'clock on Sunday on CBS. Miami Dolphins are 4-1, 1-1 in the AFC East. Panthers are 2-5 all-time against the Dolphins, including a 1-3 record at Miami. The Panthers lost their last matchup against Miami 33-10 on the road in 2021. So let's talk about this Miami Dolphins team. I talked about the win that they had last week against the New York Giants, but what did that look like? They racked up 524 total yards, including 222 rushing yards. Now, one significant update is the injury to Devon, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced this, Dolphins fans. Akane, sorry. He had 151 yards of Miami's 222 rushing yards. However, he did sustain a knee injury, and that's likely going to keep him out this week. So just something to keep your eyes on. Tua Tagovailoa, who has close connections to Bryce Young. This week, we've heard Bryce talking about his relationship with Tua and just that mentorship, just from Alabama to the NFL. He completed 73% of his passes, 22 of 30, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also threw 2 interceptions, so giving the ball up, and that's something that our team has struggled with is turnovers. If we do eliminate turnovers, again, I'm not going to say the Panthers are going to pull this upset. There's just too many things against this, and I haven't even given you my prediction, but it's just not right. So, if you're like, oh yeah, every year in the NFL, there's a game that you go, how did they lose that game? It's not this one. It's not this game. However, I don't think we can contain the offense because of our lack of depth on the defensive side of the ball. There's just no way we're going to be able to shut down the Dolphins offense. Our only hope is that we do get a turnover or two, that we do not commit a turnover, which means almost playing a perfect game. And then we see a little bit of success in the running game and Bryce coming to life, taking a few opportunities to get the ball down the field. When I went back and watched the last game, I did my film breakdown, so I broke down one defensive drive. Here's the kicker when we talk about the defense. Detroit likely could have scored way more than they did. I'm going to say at least another touchdown because I broke down the drive where the Detroit Lions had a turnover on downs. And on that drive, they had so many drops, just missed passes, couldn't catch the ball at all. And that was part of it. And it wasn't like it was just really good coverage. They were wide open and dropped it. So I anticipate that happening. Now we talk about Bryce Young. The issues that we've seen with him, it's not being hit in the pocket, but it's him having the confidence to get the ball out. People want to point to his receivers and lack of separation, but Adams looked pretty good. I'm not going to say he's a true number one receiver, but he's putting up the numbers like one. Bryce Young likes to hold on to the ball, and he doesn't like to just let it go when there's an opportunity. It was the drive right before the half. I've reviewed it, so go out to YouTube if you want to watch it. There was a play where Mingo is making a break over the middle. He actually throws it to Adam. It's the play he overshot Adam over his head. But if he had turned and looked at Mingo, he had Mingo wide open and Mingo could have ran it in. So we see a lot of that continuing to happen. The interception that he gave up, not the one to Aiden Hutchinson, because that was just a freak play and he's a good athlete. The one where he kind of baited, he had 2 guys going out. Frank Wright said that was on the receiver. I don't know. We're not in there. We don't know the play call, but it was kind of like a shallow 5-yard route for Ian Thomas. And then a 10 or 15-yard route over that. The cornerback was able to just sit between him and make the play, which is great. Dolphins, we know the New York Giants, as I kind of switch here, we know the New York Giants offense is terrible. The Dolphins defense held them in check, 268 yards allowed and just 9 points on offense, all field goals. We know this offense put up 70 points against the Broncos, likely could have set the record but chose not to. Number of points scored, total yards, first downs, passing yards, rushing touchdowns. They lead in every category. Tyreek Hill leads the NFL with 651 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. And Tagovailoa, 1,614 passing yards are at the top. I mean, this is like textbook offense, put on a clinic, put on a showcase. So there we go. When we think about this game, and I mentioned it, I don't know how we will be able to contain, because Brian Burns is a factor, but he has not been who he has. And we also have issues on the other side of the ball, like opposite of Brian Burns with Justin Houston. Ettore Gross-Matos is looking good. We lacked up at the linebacker position. Interior, Derek Brown, yes, it's great. But outside of that, kind of hit or miss. And then cornerbacks, we know we've kind of had this rotation with all the injuries that are happening there, because this feels like a day for the Dolphins to just go off. If there's any shining moment or potential for a shining moment, if we don't turn the ball over, like I said, the Dolphins are 23rd in total defense, 20th in passing defense, and 18th in rushing defense. So there is an opportunity. However, like I said, when we talk about pressure, 43 quarterback hits leads the NFL, and they have 17 sacks. So that pressure. And last week, though, Bryce Young was only sacked one time, and we knew the Lions were a really good defensive team that could get pressure as well. So if we can sustain, maybe. Now I hear there is a primetime matchup next week with the Dolphins and the Eagles. So maybe there's a sliver of hope that we catch the Dolphins just looking ahead. It happens. I mean, it happens. I don't think that they'll do that. I think they're, focused on the task at hand, taking that and moving forward. Now, injury report, I'm only going to look at the Panthers. We know Miles Sanders has missed 2 practices this week. Xavier Woods, although Xavier's making good progress. Chandler Zavala, luckily he's doing okay. Missed practice, he's likely out. Looking through, Brian Burns didn't practice today. Derek Brown or Richie, not sure why. I should say Brian Burns is limited with the ankle, and then Derek Brown with his knee. Dante Jackson, who missed, is likely going to play, is what we're hearing. And then also Corbett is still working his way back from his injury. So we'll see. I guess I can look. Yeah, the only person, Connor Williams, for the offensive line for the Miami Dolphins is the one that's listed on here, I should say, on the only significant injury that's on here that we covered there. So, before I give my predictions, it's fun. I haven't done this a lot during the week, but during the year, Mike McDaniel's a funny dude. Just like, man, I don't know how Dolphins fans and the media deal with him on a daily basis, weekly basis even. He's just, the things he says. I wanted to pull up 2 things that he said because I listened to his presser. Number one, he talked about Bryce Young, which I'll get to. But he also just had a very funny statement. I'm like, this guy, man. So he was asked, the question comes up, it says, will running back Jeff Wilson Jr. practice today, and is he on track to be able to be available if needed this weekend? His response, it just so happens that Jeff Wilson Jr.'s window is open today. He will be practicing professional football with the Miami Dolphins today, preparing for the Carolina Panthers. Like, what kind of crap is this? But that's not it. And then there's just one more on running back, Devon Achane. Is it fair to say you expect him back at some point this year? His response, that's fair. That's very fair. I'd take those tickets from the fair and go to the fair. And if I'm out in the sun too long, my skin will no longer be fair. Like, what is this dude? He is such a troll. Like, I know in the NFL you don't want to disclose too much information, but I joked with our reporters here that follow the Panthers that, aren't you glad that you don't have to deal with that? Now, he's a great coach. He's quirky. He is what he is. It's just hilarious. So here's the last thing I'll go for prediction. As Panthers fans, we don't really pay attention that much. There's this, for those who aren't tuned in, there's a big debate around C.J. Stroud and really C.J. Stroud versus Bryce Young because of the success of Stroud and where he is versus Bryce Young. And there's our fan base is split. That's just how it is. There's a lot of conversation. So every now and then I like to inject just some positivity around Bryce Young because I do think he is here to lead us. It's not going to be this year, but I do think there's some positivity here. So the question comes up. It says, I'm not sure how much you watch quarterback Bryce Young or watched him in the pre-draft process. What have you seen from him so far in his young career? And this was his response. A baller with a bright future. One of the few young quarterbacks that you see coming out that see defenders when operating as a quarterback. His vision is uncanny, and his timing and rhythm to the game, you can see that he's going to be a very good player in this league, in my opinion. There's nothing more difficult than being a rookie starting quarterback. In that process, you learn live speed. What I've seen is the guy that's showing his talent through the rhythm of plays and learning certain things with regard to his uncanny ability in the pocket and how he moves. He'll continue to get better at extending plays. He throws a very catchable ball that's built for yak, yards after catch. You can tell there's a reason for why the guys that he played with in college and how much respect they have for him. If you don't believe me, just ask any Bama player, and they can tell you why he's earned the respect of not only other rookies, but veterans on that team. Case closed. There you go. It's good to hear that every now and then, especially with the turmoil that we've had and just the state of this team where you get down in the dumps at 0-5. Here we go. Game prediction. Miami Dolphins wins. So I guess I should caveat this by saying my record prediction on the year for the Panthers, I only picked the Panthers, is 3-2. If you do the math, you realize I picked us to lose 3 times to win twice. I have said since we've started this losing streak that I'm never picking them to win again until they win a game. Now that might change after the bye week because we do have some favorable matchups with the Texans, Colts, and Bears. So, I may be biting my words here. But here we go. 0-6 going into the bye week. And for 1 week, we don't have to worry about Carolina Panthers football and being the worst team in the league. I did joke, hey, at least as the 32nd worst team in the league, we're the 32nd worst team in the world. Just joking because, they say Super Bowl champions are world champions. I've got to give a score. So we're saying 2 touchdowns. Detroit covered. Detroit even covered that with their spread. I feel like it'll be a similar situation. How many points does Mike want to put up? So if we do, so if they cover, I'm going to say 45, Miami 45. Man, I'm trying to think of where I would want to. Miami 45, Panthers 28. I was going to give them 31. I was like, back up. And the 28 is what we will have seen quite a few times, which is garbage time touchdowns. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to be proven wrong and see or hear that we come out and win this thing. Shock the world, but we'll see. All right, y'all. That is all I got. One thing, if you're still around, I will plug. I've talked about it, but YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere, follow. The other thing, for some reason, someone, I don't know who, got mad at me for whatever reason on, maybe they just hate the Panthers, maybe they hate me, and gave me a 1-star review on Apple. I do not ask this very often. I don't even ask it at all. But please, if you are out there and you're listening to me, whether it's Apple, Spotify, if you're on YouTube, but wherever you get your podcast, I do, would love for you to rate the show as a 5-star show. And if it's not, if it's a 4-star show, that's fine. A 4 or 5 stars is what I aim for. And if you're like, hey, I don't really, whatever it is, if you have a problem with me or if you have a problem with the content, just tell me, man. Please, if y'all are out there, if you're the person that did it, just let me know, privately, and hopefully I can fix whatever made you ticked off. But I am one of the top podcasts for the Carolina Panthers now that pops up wherever you go. We're building the YouTube presence. We have Twitter with 3,000 followers. So the people are out there, the people are listening, and it's making a difference. But I do, if you're on there, I would appreciate that as much. And if you want to drop a review, that's cool too. Anyways, that's all I got. This is Carolina Dad. See y'all.